Greetings. I hope this finds you well and in good spirits. Today, I wanted to ask the question, who do you think is the biggest polluter in the world? Let you think about that for a moment. And ta-da, here's the answer. It turns out the biggest polluter in the world, both domestically here in the United States and globally, is the U.S. military. Some people might be quite surprised by that. Otherwise, some might be thinking, no, that makes some sense. So the the U.S. military produces more hazardous waste than the next 5 chemical companies combined. And that's coming from stuff like the depleted uranium that they used to manufacture nuclear weapons, oil, jet fuel, pesticides, Agent Orange, etc., etc., etc. So as the former head of the Pentagon's environmental cleanup told Newsweek in 2014 that their office had to deal with 39,000 contaminated areas spread across 19 million acres, and that's just here in the United States. 39,000 contaminated areas here in the United States across 19 million acres. That's just here in the United States. That's areas that the military has polluted. That is just astronomical. And then this particular numbers research I got from the website EcoWatch. So this stuff's really easy to find. Google U.S. military environmental impact, U.S. military environmental stuff. You'll be able to easily find this, not pulling any of this out of thin air. So that site talked about how both domestic and foreign military bases, U.S. bases, and ones that we have abroad, consistently rank as some of the most polluted places in the world. And then also the EPA has this list of Superfund sites, which is basically the most polluted areas, most contaminant areas, in the United States. And almost 900 out of the 1,200 Superfund sites are abandoned military bases or sites, that used to support the military's needs. And then they list some examples. So Camp Lejeune, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. It's in Jacksonville, North Carolina. The groundwater had been polluted with carcinogens all the way from 1953 up to 1987. So that's just insane. 30 years, those people in that community were potentially drinking groundwater with carcinogens in them. That's horrible. And then this isn't just happening, in the bases that we have here in the United States. This environmental destruction, the pollution of waterways, of the air, of the soil, everything happens, on these bases abroad as well. This article talked about Kadena Air Force Base, which is located in Okinawa, Japan. And then it linked to a Common Dreams article written by Andrea Germanos, which talked about the local drinking water, around Okinawa had been contaminated due to years of repeated mishaps and lack of safety standards by the Air Force. And then I cite a specific example. In 2015, there was a drunk Marine in one of the hangars. They basically activated the firefighting system, which filled the hangar with 1,500 liters of Jet X 2.75, which is a foam that's been classified as hazardous, containing chemicals known to cause cancer and other, horrible stuff like that. And then so that foam that was in the hangar made its way into local waterways, but the base did not notify local authorities. This stuff, you do the research anywhere the military is or has been, there's going to be lots of pollution, lots of hazardous waste, lots of destruction of the kind of local ecosystem. Basically, wherever the military goes, the environment's going to be fucked, more or less. Then it also talked about between 1946 and 1958, U.S. tested 66 nuclear bombs near the Bikini Atoll. Marshallese people, the people of the Marshall Islands, they were exposed to radiation from the fallout. And then, the people in the Marshall Islands, as well as those living in Guam, experienced much higher rates of cancer, due to being exposed to that radioactive fallout. And then the native people here, so Navajo reservations have been polluted with long abandoned uranium mines. They're mining, the government was, mining the uranium to use in their nuclear weapons. And then also, just like a very big example is like the Iraq War. After our military went and intervened there, 90% of the territory has become desert, and Iraq now has to import 80% of its food, along with a lot of other stuff. So yeah, I mean, this is just the tip of the proverbial iceberg. These are just a few examples that I went over, but I hope you kind of get the point that, like I said, wherever the U.S. military has been or is now is more than likely a very, very contaminated area. The environmental destruction probably has already started. Drinking water, air pollution, improper disposal of all these chemicals, and this is happening here. Like I said, there was an example in Japan, there's an example in the Marshallese Islands. Pretty much we're at, there, I think we have, I have to look at the number, but we have hundreds of bases all around the world, the U.S. military does, and I would say almost without question, all of those are going to bring about some type of environmental destruction or degradation where they're at, and it's just a little twisted in my view, because my and your tax dollars are going to fund the death and destruction of not only people but the environment as well, wherever the military has to be operating at. So it's another reason why, if we scaled back the military industrial complex, given that we spend more than the next 7 countries combined on our military, I think we could scale it back quite a bit and still be a-okay and safe and all that good stuff. So we scale the military industrial complex back, it's going to be better for the environment, which is better for the people, which is better for the planet, and then we also have more money and resources to not devote to killing the environment and killing each other. So yay, let's think about it in an anarchist principle way, as far as, let's hierarchical, domineering, coercive, authoritarian structure. I don't think it can be justified, so we got to dismantle it and build it back from the ground up with something that's more fair and just, and built around those principles instead of the ones that I see it kind of currently being built around. So just a little info, a little food for thought about the U.S. military's impact on our environment. And this is, just doing this research, I came back across an article I read a few years ago on Truth Out by Dar Jamal, I believe is the reporter's name, talking about how the Navy here in the Pacific Northwest is going to be, during their war games and different training like that, releasing these different so-called stressors into the environment. So it's like, this stuff's happening here, this stuff's happening in different parts of the U.S., this stuff's happening all over the world, and it has so many wide-ranging consequences. None of them, in my head, I see as being positive. So let's think about some ways, some direct action ways that we can possibly come up with some solutions or generate some ideas or some dialogue about how we can, yeah, work on coming together and finding some common ground on some solutions for these issues. And would love to hear your thoughts on this topic, or just on the military industrial complex in general. And let's all remember to be kind to each other, kind to the animals, kind to the planet, and most important, kind to ourselves. Peace.